Welcome to Motivation at Hand. To know is to know how. Make your foot the foot that counts. In homes where whispers grow to cries, where truth and fear wear the same guise. Families tremble 'neath watchful eyes, when accusations rise. Children's laughter fades to silence, joy succumbs to compliance. As the specter of abuse brings defiance, and trust begins to die. Within these walls where love should dwell, confusion casts its spell. As protectors become suspects, narratives they must dispel. Rights entangled in the fray, as innocence is swept away. In the balance, futures sway, distorted practices today. The class action lawsuit against New York City's Administration for Children's Services, ACS, underscores significant systemic issues within child protective services. Touching on constitutional rights, racial and economic disparities, the need for systemic reform, and broader social and political implications. This analysis synthesizes the key aspects of the lawsuit and its wider context. Based upon the hidden protracted battles with child protective services in New York and throughout the country, constitutional and legal concerns. The lawsuit challenges the constitutionality of ACS's practices, particularly the unauthorized searches of homes without court orders, emergencies, or voluntary consent. This practice directly conflicts with the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. The rare use of court orders and the reliance on coerced consent underscore serious legal and ethical concerns about respecting individual rights while safeguarding children. This aspect of the lawsuit could prompt a reevaluation of legal procedures within child protective services to ensure they align with constitutional protections. Racial and economic disparities. The lawsuit highlights the disproportionate impact of ACS's actions on Black and Hispanic families, reflecting systemic biases that exacerbate vulnerabilities for marginalized communities. The conflation of poverty indicators with neglect, along with the potential for system abuse through false reports, points to a need for reforms that address racial and economic disparities. Addressing these biases requires a systemic overhaul that includes better training, policies that recognize and mitigate bias, and a more nuanced approach to assessing family situations. Trauma and impact on families. The invasive tactics employed by ACS, including strip searches of children and coercive threats to remove children from their homes, have deeply traumatizing effects on both children and parents. These practices undermine trust in child protective services and leave lasting psychological scars. The lawsuit calls attention to the essential balance between protecting children and avoiding unnecessary harm, suggesting a need for practices that are both effective in identifying genuine cases of abuse and sensitive to the well-being of children and families. Systemic reform and policy implications. If the lawsuit leads to ACS's practices being declared unconstitutional, it could have significant implications for child protective services across the country. Such a precedent would emphasize the importance of legal protections, transparency, and respect for families' rights, encouraging a shift from a punitive approach to one that supports and empowers families. This case highlights the critical need for reforms that prioritize the well-being and rights of children and families, potentially guiding future policy and practice. Broader social and political context. The issues raised in the lawsuit reflect wider debates about state intervention in family life, the balance between child safety and family autonomy, and systemic inequities in social services. The public attention and discourse generated by this case could catalyze a broader reevaluation of the objectives and methods of child protective services, advocating for strategies that are more supportive rather than punitive. Finally, the class action lawsuit against New York City's ACS represents a pivotal moment in the ongoing discussion about the role and practices of child protective services. It raises fundamental questions about constitutional rights, systemic bias, the balance between child protection and respect for family autonomy. The outcome of this lawsuit and the ensuing public debate may lead to more humane, equitable, and effective approaches to child welfare, emphasizing support over surveillance and empowerment over enforcement, and the need for systemic reform. The Parents' Bill of Rights is outlined by the National Coalition for Parent Advocacy in Child Protective Services. This document is both a moral and practical framework intended to ensure that families are treated with dignity, respect, and fairness throughout their interactions with Child Protective Services, CPS. It emphasizes the importance of cultural and linguistic appropriateness, access to support services, legal protections, and the maintenance of family bonds and parental rights. Key components of the Parents' Bill of Rights. Access to support services. It asserts that parents should have access to essential services including education, housing, healthcare, and financial assistance to facilitate the upbringing of their children in a safe and nurturing environment. Help and advocacy. Parents are entitled to immediate assistance and advocacy, especially from those who have experienced the CPS system firsthand, ensuring they have the knowledge and support to navigate the system effectively. Transparency and information. The right to be fully informed about the reasons for investigations, the outcomes, and all subsequent processes is fundamental. This includes understanding one's rights at every step, from initial contact through to court proceedings and beyond. Legal protections and fair treatment. The Bill of Rights underscores the importance of due process, including the right to legal representation, to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, and to be treated without discrimination. Implications for systemic reform. The Parents' Bill of Rights is document not only advocates for the rights of parents but also highlights the need for a child welfare system that is more supportive, transparent, and fair. It challenges policymakers, child welfare professionals, and communities to consider how they can better support families in crisis and ensure that children can grow up in safe, loving, and stable environments. Incorporating these rights into state and federal laws would represent a significant step forward in improving the CPS system, making it more responsive to the needs of families and less likely to cause unnecessary harm. It encourages a shift from a punitive approach to one that is more holistic, recognizing that supporting families and addressing underlying needs is often the most effective way to protect and promote the welfare of children. Advocates arise in the night, bearing torches of justice and right, seeking to restore families' light, amidst CPS might. With voices firm and intentions clear, yet the start was all a smear. Much appreciation to you for giving of your time with us at Motivation at Hand. To know is to know how. We trust you will come back soon.